All right, you're looking live there, of course, at the White House, 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue. Hello, everybody. This is RSBN Live. I'm Matthew Alvarez. We have two broadcasts for you today. We'll talk about our second one in just a minute as we are, of course, on to Tuesday, April 15th. We know it's tax day out there, but we also know President Trump speaking in an interview to Fox talking about tariffs and the amount of money that our country would make off of tariffs and the possibility of eliminating an income tax. We'll see if that comes to pass, but we do know that we're going to get a lot of money through these tariffs. We're talking $2 billion per day, according to the president. I know there's a 90-day pause right now with a lot of the countries out there, most of them. China still not backing down when it comes to the tariff situation. But we'll get into all of that a little bit later. Today, of course, at 1 o'clock Eastern time, Karoline Leavitt, the one that bats 1,000 every time she's up there, combating the fake news verbally when it comes to some of the lies that are thrown her way, redirecting it to truth and common sense. Always wonderful to see that. Information that I just shared with you, you won't see that or hear that on the fake news. But enough really bashing the fake news, at least from RSBN for a little bit. I mean, of course, maybe in 10 minutes we'll rethink that. But the point is, there's so many people that are now shifting over to conservative media. We're seeing it every day. It's great to see. It's great to be a part of history with this great president at that great White House. And we want to just see wins, 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 and more accomplishments and more promises made, promises kept. That was the signature of the first Trump administration, now as the second Trump administration, now as the 47th Commander-in-Chief. So we have a number of live interviews we're going to get to today as, of course, this is Holy Week. And really, I was thinking about Holy Week. I know it's this week, but it seems as if that is to be celebrated all year round, just like Thanksgiving or maybe even the birth of Christ, Christmas, just to have that memory of what it was like and what happened. And we celebrate as a nation those that are of the Jewish faith for the Passover, those for Resurrection Sunday, this coming Sunday, Easter. So we're looking forward to the week and, of course, Good Friday coming up as we are a faith organization here at Right Side Broadcasting Network. We believe in the Old Testament. We believe in the New Testament. And for those that don't believe any of that stuff, we welcome you to watch because at the end of the day, we love to bring common sense reporting each day, and including hearing some great commentary, analysis, some live interviews, all of the above right here on Right Side Broadcasting Network. And all of it brought to you by some great donations by RSBN viewers and also Colonial Metals Group, a great sponsor here at the network. So all you have to do is go to freegoldguide.com/RSBN. So freegoldguide.com/RSBN. Gold and silver as a backup plan to the dollar. For those of you that have a little bit in your retirement or savings, you can always shift over to Colonial Metals Group. Also, angelpaste.com out of Spring, Texas. You see the product on your screen there. There's a number of products that they have on that website. So just go to angelpaste.com and use the RSBN promo code. You'll get a percentage off. Also, let's go to callsheet.com/RSBN. Will egg prices go up this month? Well, if you ask President Trump and his team, no. The answer is that they'll go down, and they continually go down. But that's one of the questions right there on callsheet.com. A lot of great questions on there that you can trade and you can bet on. callsheet.com/RSBN. All right, so it's 12:05 Eastern. At 1 o'clock, again, a press briefing at the West Wing of the White House there with Karoline Leavitt. On the president's schedule today, the president will be signing some executive orders at the Oval Office. And then at 3:30, the president participates in a Commander-in-Chief trophy presentation to the Navy midshipmen, the United States Naval Academy. That will be from the East Room. We'll have live coverage at 3 o'clock with RSBN host Robert McNeely. And actually, Robert McNeely will be joining us in about 15 minutes or so. And we'll tell you why in just a minute over the phone. We'll go to him live. But before we go to Robert live, let's go to someone else live, the executive producer, Stephen Moore, of a new film out called A Faith Under Siege. Sir, thank you so much for joining us here on Right Side.
Hey, Matt, great to be with you.
Definitely. So talk to us about this situation, Faith Under Siege. We know as Christians and as Jews and other faiths out there, a lot of persecution going on. You guys specifically focus in on one of them. Can you share about the film with us?
Yeah, exactly. As a conservative, I listened to what you were saying earlier. There's just stories that don't get out. And this is one of those stories that don't get out. And, Vladimir Putin has shut down every church in occupied Ukraine, and he's made it a crime um, to just have a Bible study in your home. There's people in prison right now for having a Bible study in their home. And you saw on Palm Sunday, there was 34 people killed. So far, they found 34 bodies in a place called Sumy in near the Russian border in Ukraine. And there's a great video of an Baptist church. It's someone that's videoing the service, and then there's an explosion. The whole thing shakes, and they turn to the window, and there's smoke. So this is just something that's not getting out. And I went to Ukraine on day 5 of the war to help, and I kept meeting Christians who had stories of being tortured for their faith. I kept meeting people who had lost loved ones. There's pastors. There's 47 pastors and priests and other faith leaders that have been killed by the Russians. And they're targeting evangelicals. Evangelicals are 4% of Ukraine's population, but they make up half of the pastors that have been killed by the Russians.
So we see that specifically over the weekend in Sumy, Ukraine. We also saw in Nigeria, 51 Christians were slaughtered. Then you look back a few weeks ago in Congo, the same thing there. And to your point about some of the people that go to prison because they have a Bible study or a church, you've seen that and have heard that. For those of you that are familiar with it, Voice of the Martyrs out there, specifics about China and the situation. So let's go to the heart of the matter, sir, as your film, Faith Under Siege. Why do you think it is that we're even seeing this happen? Why can't it be like America, where, if you believe this or believe that, you have the freedom of religion to do so?
Well, listen, Vladimir Putin is not a guy that believes in freedom. He believes in control. And, with Christians, we have one higher authority. It's Jesus. And Putin doesn't want the competition. And there's a myth that's gotten out that he's some sort of defender of Christianity, but he's not. It's illegal in Russia to preach the gospel. And again, he's gone into Ukraine. There's 650 churches that have been destroyed. About a third of them are evangelical churches. And again, evangelical Christians make up 4% of Ukraine's population. So they're way disproportionately targeted by the Russians.
Also, outside of that, I've seen reports that Ukraine leader Zelensky has also come against some of the Christian faith. Have you heard that at all, or is that something that you haven't seen?
I live in Ukraine. I've been to the front 50 times. I've been around there. That is not accurate, and I'll tell you why. There's a kernel of truth to that, and there's a church called the Ukrainian Orthodox Church, which is the branch of the Russian Orthodox Church inside Ukraine. And the Russian Orthodox Church is essentially a working arm of the Kremlin. And so the patriarch of the Russian Orthodox Church is a guy named Kirill. Kirill was a KGB agent with Putin back in the day, and he has recently declared a holy war on Ukraine and the West. I don't know what happened at your church last Sunday, but nobody declared a holy war at mine. And so, so there's the Ukrainian Orthodox Church, which is a branch of the Russian Orthodox Church, and there's priests and clergy that have been on trial for spying for the Russians, for targeting artillery for the Russians, for preaching surrender, that sort of thing. And so this church, the Ukrainian Orthodox Church, is seen as a security threat by 85% of Ukrainians. So what they've done is they've asked this church to break ties with Moscow. If you break ties with Moscow, everything's great. If you don't want to break ties with Moscow, then you're no longer going to get the governmental benefits of being a church.
At the end of the day, the people of Ukraine, the people of Russia want to be free and out of this war. Outside of the faith discussion, sir, I want to hear your thoughts on the Russia-Ukraine war and how President Trump's handling it when it comes to making sure that there's peace there and interacting with the Russian government and the Ukrainian government, a part of what he has to do to bring peace. Your thoughts about how that process has been going?
Yeah, thanks for asking. I went to Israel about 10 or 12 years ago and just had an amazing blow-away trip, as many people do when they go to Israel. And one thing they said to me that stuck with me was that if if Hamas lays down its weapons, there'll be no more war. If Israel lays down their weapons, there'll be no more Israel. And it's that way with Ukraine. Ukraine just wants peace. They just want to be left alone. And Putin wants to reconstitute the Russian Empire. And, if you look at some of these negotiations, the White House announced that there would be a ceasefire on energy project, like energy installations, like, don't hit power plants, don't hit Russian refineries, because the Ukrainians have been very successful in crippling the Russian refinery industry. But, 2 days after that was announced, Putin hit a power plant in Ukraine. And Putin is already in violation of multiple ceasefires, peace agreements, international treaties of all sorts with dozens of countries, including the United States of America. So I think what Ukrainians and folks that care about peace should be looking at is what is going to keep Putin from continuing what he's doing. What's the peace agreement gonna, what's going to stop Putin? And unfortunately, Putin only respects strength. So I think that's what Trump has to do. He has to project that strength to Putin, so he knows that that Putin knows that he's got to stop.
Well, and we've already seen that happening with President Trump and Putin over the years. We've seen that as well with Zelensky out of Ukraine. At the end of the day, our money, though, going toward any kind of war as well, and this is outside of the topic we're talking about, is not what the American citizens want. At the end of the day, we want peace between those countries. That's what President Trump wants, of course. So, sir, thank you so much for joining us. Executive producer Stephen Moore of Faith Under Siege. Specifically, that core of the meaning of that title, though, is really interesting, because we do see that happening throughout the world. Sir, thank you again for joining us on Right Side.
Hey, thanks for having me on.
Thank you, Stephen. All right, so it's 12/13, Tuesday, April 15th. Of course, looking forward to the press briefing, which will be happening in just about 45 minutes. We'll hear from Karoline Leavitt, of course, the batting 1,000, of course, always hitting a home run when she's up there with the opening statement, with the Q&A from some of the reporters as well. So we're looking forward to that. If you saw a video just a few days ago, Margot Martin, who of course is there at the White House and doing great things for this country, and also documenting a lot of what's happening alongside Dan Scavino Jr., posted a video of Karoline Leavitt and the team praying before going out there to the press briefing room and praying in Jesus' name that the confidence and the strength and the words to say would be with her. And so for her to pray, but also to have the talent that she has, that 1-2 punch, figuratively speaking, going out there in front of the world, speaking for the leader of the free world, pretty awesome to see that. Every time there's a press briefing, whether I'm working or if I'm off and Robert's here, I'll watch, because these press briefings are really fascinating, especially when you have sheer truth being spoken against those that are trying to lie, like we saw at the Oval Office just yesterday when the El Salvador president was there, of course, Bukele, who's a rock star along with President Trump. You had some of the fake news standing right next to the deputy chief of staff at the White House, Stephen Miller, standing right next to the fake news, CNN and others, and to see the sheer truth be shared by Stephen and others. You can see the behind the scenes almost. You can see the good versus the evil. If you pull back that curtain, we just want to hear people telling it like it is, right? And that's why we like President Trump. I think that's why you like Right Side Broadcasting Network. We put on people, everyday Americans throughout all those rallies, and they just tell it how it is. And I think that you guys are tired of the talking points from the left. So hence why myself and others here at the network really just want to tell it like it is, and don't even use a prompter. I'd love to have a prompter sometimes. You see me fumbling around sometimes here, but it's constantly live at this network, and it's awesome because this brings you inside the Washington, D.C. Beltway, and we'll be seeing that speech there from Karoline Leavitt, of course, at the beginning, and then the Q&A back and forth with reporters. But just to finish up that point, the truth versus the lies, we're seeing it every day. And we're seeing the truth win, and it's great to see it. And it's just awesome to be a part of history in the making every day covering this White House. So we're going to go to a video in just a second. Let's go to Colonial Metals Group first. And tell you about the gold and silver as a backup plan. So those BRICS nations like Brazil, Russia, India, China, South Africa, and other countries out there are trying to use their local currency instead of our US dollar. And we know that we're looking for Maganomics to increase and to really bring down that inflation even more, and wages higher in some areas, but also having gold and silver as a backup plan to your retirement and your savings, putting those dollars into gold and silver. You can learn all about that by going to freegoldguide.com/RSBN. So freegoldguide.com/RSBN. Let's also go to Free Trump Guide. I believe I heard my earpiece has fallen out a little bit. Did you say? Yeah, okay. Let's go to Free Trump Guide or freetrumpbook.com. You can get a lot of great topics there, everything from American greatness to the Kids Guide to President Trump and fighting indoctrination, and so many great topics with freetrumpbook.com. The great Mike Huckabee, of course, he and his staff wrote those books, and you can have them for free, freetrumpbook.com. Let's also go to mypillow.com/RSBN. So you see there, My Mattress Topper, the sale for Mike Lindell. The promo code RSBN, you'll get a lot of savings on that code, RSBN as well. So at 12:17 Eastern Time, let's go to the pivot now to Holy Week. Carla Sands, the former ambassador to Denmark under President Trump, sent us a video message, and here's that message to you.
Happy Easter, my friend. You know, when I was a little kid, I knew what Easter was about the blood of the Lamb, but I still loved my Easter basket. But today, as I reflect on this the holiest time of the year for the Christians in the world and the Christian faith, I think about what happened 1,500 years before that Passover in the upper room. And that was when the Israelites were fleeing Egypt. And God told the Israelites to sacrifice a lamb, to put the blood on their doors, to protect them when the angel of death went over. And these Israelites were told to roast that lamb, to have their sandals on, their travel clothes on, and be ready to leave at a moment. And they ate unleavened bread, and they ate that lamb. And then 1,500 years later, there was Christ in the upper room with his disciples on Passover, because remember, the day for the Jewish calendar starts at sundown. So on Passover, he broke the bread and he drank the wine, and he commemorated the first communion ever with his disciples the night he was about to die the following day. That's the same day in the Hebrew tradition. And so his blood was sacrificed for us. He was the new lamb, the sacrificial lamb that takes away the sins of the world. It's an amazing story that lamb 1,500 years earlier in Egypt became our Lord and Savior when he sacrificed his life to atone for our sins. And so as we reflect on this Easter, as we celebrate it, because this is the gift of eternal life, I hope you'll remember the beautiful story from Exodus, from Matthew, from John. You'll never forget the Passover story and Easter. Thanks.
All right, so from Carla Sands just earlier today, of course, actually sending that video recently to us here at the network. Also coming up, Robert McNeely, our RSBN host, will join us here on Right Side Broadcasting Network to share with us a little bit of a coverage that's happening a little bit later today, and also to talk to us about some of the great things about Holy Week this week. So we'll get to that in just a second. Again, it's 12:20, Tuesday, April 15th. Let's go to one of today's scriptures that, since we're in Holy Week, that I'd like to share with you. So it is also Psalm 95, verse 6. Come, let us worship. Let us bow down and kneel before the Lord our Maker. Come, let us worship. Let us bow down and kneel before the Lord our Maker. It's short, it's simple, but it's to the point. And I did study the Bible back in the day in college, a little bit more than just the English, looking into Greek. And the word worship is proskuneo, which means to bow down or prostrate or lay on your face. That's true worship, which is quite interesting because That's what God seeks to have from us. I see that in the Bible as well. If you remember, Jesus, after 40 days of fasting, Satan appeared to him and said, I'll give you all this. You see, went to the pinnacle of the mountain. I'll give you this whole thing, this whole city, this whole kingdom, if you bow down and worship me. And Jesus said, there's no one that is going to be bowed down to except for God and God alone. Paraphrasing slightly there, but I can say that really bowing down is a huge, awesome thing that we can do in worship to God this Holy Week. So that's a scripture there. Also, let's go to Robert McNeely, who's joining us live right now on the phone. Robert, thanks so much for stopping by for a second. I know you're going to be here a bit later today as well.
Yes, sir. Always a pleasure to be with you, Matthew.
Definitely. So I know that around 3 o'clock, we'll have 3 o'clock Eastern coverage with you with the Navy Midshipman event with the president. But before we get to that, let's just talk about Holy Week. How awesome is it that we're in a nation that we have that freedom of religion?
Oh, it's an amazing pinnacle. And at the time when our founders instituted this, it's a very liberal idea because constitutional monarchies really dominating the Western world in the 18th century. And many of those constitutional monarchies, although you can argue perhaps is the best form of governance, and of course Magna Carta from the 13th century, inspiring a lot of those Enlightenment and liberal ideas of freedom, and some even arguing that it does come directly from God, but many of those governments having a direct correlation or tie to, say, Rome and the Catholic Church, or another form of religious subservience within the governance. So in other words, if you were not part of that church or that religion, then you could be prosecuted for that. So very liberal ideas in the time, what our founders did to say that rights come from God, not government, and that you can ultimately choose if and how you so worship.
Exactly. And so can you talk to us about your thoughts about the persecution that Jews and Christians alike throughout this world are facing? Just over the weekend in Ukraine, but also in Nigeria, the other week in Congo. And then even the president right now saying, you know what, Harvard University, you guys are being, terrorist organizations. President Trump pulling federal grants from Harvard. I mean, people have to just get it straight here. It's either there's a law and we follow this thing and get it right, or we just let anything happen, anything goes, which is not the way to go.
Such a beautiful reminder of this country that we have freedom of religion. I was reminded on Palm Sunday with my pastor here in Auburn said, if you cannot come for Holy Week services, please stop at 3 o'clock on Friday. Remember what Christ did for us, ripping open that veil. His body and flesh failed in that moment, but the spirit persevered. And that's why I'm so excited to see Mel Gibson's sequel to The Passion that is beginning to film, I believe, in Italy in the coming weeks. And that will depict those 2 to 3 days where Christ went into the underworld, into hell, to redeem those souls. So it's a beautiful reminder of that. But yes, the cross now, because we live with religious freedom here in America, it's glorified now. But remember, it was the most dangerous form of Roman execution, the most fearful. It was to not only make you feel isolated and alone, but literally kill you by suffocation. You would almost hope to die a quick death, although torturous and painful, because it literally would rack and break your bones. You could not breathe over the course of hours and days in some cases. Now it's glorified. Christ reverses everything literally in this moment, in this week that we celebrate. And sometimes it's hard to remember, with so much abundance in this country, that that's the cost of believing in these things, that the cross is the ultimate crown jewel, that we are to carry that. And sometimes as Christians, we do forget that, but their brothers and sisters around the world, are going through those hardships. And that's why I'm so grateful for President Trump and his team, and the fact that they're embracing and making these stories known throughout the world and supporting those Christians who are persecuted.
Exactly. It's so wonderful that Jesus did not stay in that grave, rose again on the third day. Of course, we're celebrating that on Sunday. Robert, can you talk to us a little bit about just overall the 30,000-foot view of what we're seeing right now with this president, this team, as we're approaching that 100-day mark. We've been talking about it, you and I think over the past 80 days. Every day we cover this president, it seems as if we're giving the commentary after 100 days, because it seems like he's done 100 days of work in, 20 days.
Well, as the Jewish and Christian people celebrate Emmanuel, literally the translation, God with us, we hear that more during the Advent and Christmas season. But it's so true with this president and with this team, with the faith office and everyone he's surrounded himself with. It's subject matter experts. These people, I've said it many times, in the cabinet do not need these positions. In fact, many of them taking big pay cuts on top of ridicule, on top of just all of the spears and arrows slung and flung their direction in order to make this country great again. And I love that he's put a team together that they're really good with media. And that's helpful, whether they've been on-air hosts themselves or people that have been experienced as governors or having positions where they've discussed with media on a regular basis. We saw that just yesterday with President Bukele from El Salvador, whether it was Secretary of State Marco Rubio or even Attorney General Pam Bondi, of course, Stephen Miller, the special assistant, really breaking down the case and why the Supreme Court ruled 9-0 that the Alien Enemies Act is to be upheld and that the executive has the sole authority when it comes to that in our government, all the way back to 1798. The courts do not dictate immigration policy in this country. Full stop. So, it's great to see that this team really not only is on the side of facts, but that they are surrounded by, I believe, angels, I believe God, and I think President Trump believes, going back to July 13th of last year, that God put him on this mission, preserving his life in order to save this country.
Exactly. Let's highlight Stephen Miller, the deputy chief of staff at the White House yesterday, standing next to the fake news and still breaking it down to your point. But, when you look at Stephen, you look at Karoline Leavitt, you look at all these people, they communicate with such clarity and truth and sheer just precise information. And you can't argue with it. You could try, but you really can't, right?
Well, we saw just last week, too, that Karoline with her team, I believe Margot Martin actually filmed that. They're all praying before she goes out. So the Holy Spirit is with them in all of this. And it's beautiful to see that back in the White House, because sadly we went through 4 years of someone with Joe Biden who was Catholic in name only. And I could say that being a practicing Catholic, because he might have gone through the motions, but his team around him did not believe that. And ultimately that would have been okay. But as you see the different faith traditions, the different backgrounds of this White House, they all share in prayer together. And Scott Turner from HUD, of course, the first cabinet meeting, they all broke out in prayer together. So, it's astounding to see that they are turning to God in this amazing moment. And, who else did that? President Bukele and his team. And they went from the most dangerous country in the Western Hemisphere in El Salvador to now the safest. They're safer than we are per capita. Think about that for a moment.
Yeah, it's wild. I've seen that online as well, that it's safer to go to a place like El Salvador instead of some of the other countries like Sweden. It's shocking to see it. But when you have a great leader, great things happen. And we see that with Bukele. Of course, we see that with President Trump. Robert, can you talk to us about today at 3 o'clock? I know there's an event that the president will be involved in. Can you talk to us a little bit about that coverage a little bit later? I'm not sure what it is other than an event with the Navy, right?
It is, yeah, the Commander-in-Chief Ball. So this is a special trophy that they were successful at with the Navy and Army traditional game, which was outstanding this year because both teams, two of the best seasons they've ever had in football. So we know that over the course of the last week, especially, whether it be with the Ohio State University Buckeyes yesterday, which we're joking around a bit because one of their finest graduates, of course, Vice President J.D. Vance, fumbled the trophy, but the trophy's intact. We were actually mentioning with Mr. Producer, I did not know that the National Football Championship separates like that. So the trophy was safe, but the base went down. But I'm sure it was a fun moment at the White House regardless. Always President Trump, Vice President Vance, always able to handle those sometimes silly moments, but I'm sure that was a fun day with the scarlet and gray. But back to the Navy, an amazing season. And they really were in the discussion, cut through the top 20 of all of college football into the top 10 in points. Of course, the Notre Dame Fighting Irish, who took on Ohio State, they were able to beat them pretty well, the Navy midshipmen, earlier on in the season. But regardless, a season to be proud of. And you usually don't see that with football. They've been historically not the strongest against these big conference names, but we'll see if Navy and Army get some bigger recruits now, given that they played so well last year.
Yeah, definitely. All right, so we're going to see that coverage with you, sir, at 3 o'clock right here at the desk. RSBN host Robert McNeely, thanks so much for joining us. We'll see you a bit later. Godspeed.
We'll see you soon, Matthew.
All right, see ya. All right, so 12:31, you see the live stakeout spot there. That's right near where some of the mainstream media, some of the conservative media do those live shots. You see the White House in the background. That's that shot right there. And then, of course, you're seeing that we're awaiting Karoline Leavitt for the press conference that will be starting in just about 28 minutes. Why don't we take a commercial break right here on Right Side Broadcasting Network? We have more to come. I'm Matthew Alvarez. We'll see you in a second.
Welcome to Right Side Broadcasting Network, your trusted conservative news outlet. At RSBN, we deliver the truth when the mainstream media falls short. Since 2015, we've proudly broadcasted every single one of President Trump's iconic MAGA rallies, bringing you the excitement and energy live before anyone else. By watching RSBN, you get an unfiltered front row view of the action on the ground. We interview the crowds to give a voice to millions of Americans just like you. We show you President Trump's speeches in their entirety, free from interruptions and censorship. We cover the stories that matter to you with the integrity and passion you deserve. Thank you for choosing RSBN as your home for America First News. Together, we stand strong, united, and informed. So join us and be part of the right side of history.
President Trump is keeping his promises and saving America. And your kids can learn all about it for free with a new Kids Guide to President Trump. This fun guide shows kids all the steps President Trump is taking to put America back on top of the world stage, including building a strong economy, protecting our borders, and negotiating trade deals. It's an exciting way for kids to learn about President Trump's outstanding leadership. Act now and get a free bonus guide, The Courage of the President. Order now at freetrumpbook.com. That's freetrumpbook.com.
Hey y'all, it's Silk from the Diamond and Silk Chit Chat live show. Look, don't forget to check me out right here on RSBN Network. Be sure to watch the show on Right Side Broadcasting Network, and I want you to support Right Side Broadcasting Network. Yes, it's imperative that you do so, okay? I look to see y'all soon. Bye-bye.
Hello, everyone. I'm excited to announce the next generation of energy drinks, Rev 7. It has no sugar and no caffeine. Instead, Rev 7 uses Go BHB. Go BHB is one of the body's primary ketones, and it provides the most efficient and clean fuel that your body needs. It also helps you stay energized all day with no crashes. Not only that, it produces 3 times more brain energy than sugar, which helps boost your memory, focus, and mental sharpness. It also helps reduce stress and helps balance your mood. Rev 7 does all that while being the best tasting energy drink ever. So go to mypillow.com or call the number on your screen. Use your promo code to save 20% today. I'm so sure you're going to love Rev 7. For a limited time, you get our introductory 3-pack absolutely free. I drink Rev 7 every day, and I absolutely love it, and so will you.
Welcome back to RSBN Live, looking at the stakeout area there. Sometimes Karoline Leavitt will stop at that microphone, or Stephen Miller. We also have a live vantage point, I'm sure, of the Capitol building, the White House, and possibly the press briefing room as we get ready to go inside the West Wing there at the Brady press briefing room. We'll hear what Karoline Leavitt has to say at the beginning of the press conference, and then we'll hear from some of the fake news. We'll also hear from new media, conservative media, which a lot of people are starting to watch, listen, click on that content instead of that junk that's coming from the left. It's pretty simple. And you're not going to hear that again on mainstream media because they always want you to think they have everything together, everything's perfect, and here's the news. Well, your news is fake. It's fake news. And it was pretty awesome seeing President Trump on Air Force One the other day. introducing his granddaughter Kai to the fake news. He goes, "Hey, this is the fake news. Welcome to the..." It was just a fun interaction. I can't do a great impersonation of President Trump. I'll leave that up to Robert McNeely and others. But the point is, it's kind of a laughing stock at this point, the left-wing media is. I'm trying not to keep going against the mainstream media, but it's hard not to because I used to work in mainstream media. I saw what it was like. Thank God for conservative media and common sense and truth and just a love for God, our country, and we the people. So that's what President Trump has. That's what Karoline Leavitt has. That's what J.D. Vance and Stephen Miller, RFK Jr., the list goes on, Elon Musk, all the great cabinet leaders. We see so many awesome things happening, and it's just great to cover it here at Right Side. So a little bit later, the CEO of the National Religious Broadcasters, Troy Miller, will join us at about 12:45 Eastern, so in just a few minutes from now. Let's shift over to a White House email that came out talking about illegal aliens. Speaking of numerous criminals who Democrats and the legacy media are defending. Brutal killers and rapists all taken off our streets in just the past week thanks to the tireless work of ICE. If Democrats and the legacy media had it their way, these sick criminals would be roaming free. So there was a list of about 20 criminals that were sent to the media out there, and it's just every kind of crime you can think of. There's about 20 of them that are now off the streets. This was done over the past 72 hours. And it's true. I mean, if the Democrats and some of the legacy media had it their way, they thrive on disorganization. They thrive on chaos and weakness and all of those things to try and destroy the fabric of our country. But thanks be to God, we have President Trump and this team in there sewing it back up, making it stronger than ever before, and moving forward as a nation. All right, so it's 12:38, Tuesday, April 15th. Some of our sponsors include angelpaste.com out of Spring, Texas. All you have to do is go to angelpaste.com, use that RSBN promo code for the Miracle Cream. There's also a number of other products on there as well. They hire military veterans, a great sponsor, and a great product right here on Right Side Broadcasting Network. Let's shift over to Colonial Metals Group. So freegoldguide.com. You'll get a free gold guide if you just go to freegoldguide.com/RSBN. You can also use that QR code right there on your screen. You'll get that sent to you in your mailbox. Gives you all the information you need when it comes to gold and silver as a backup to your dollar, especially if those dollars are in your retirement or your savings. freegoldguide.com/RSBN. All right, so we see, again, that email from the White House just recently talking about the criminal aliens being deported. And if anybody defends criminal aliens, you wonder why. And again, it's to that point of trying to destroy the nation. But thank God we've got, more than 80% of the nation, even some Democrats out there that say, I don't want the radical extreme thing going on here. I do want stronger borders. I do want law and order. I do want health and wealth for our country. So we're seeing a lot of great things, again, happen across our nation. All right, so we do know that President Trump, of course, means business when it comes to all things America First. On the heels of pulling more than $2 billion in federal grants from Harvard University, as the school continues to allow pro-terrorist protests on campus, this morning on Truth Social, the President of the United States said the following: perhaps Harvard should lose its tax-exempt status and be taxed as a political entity if it keeps pushing political, ideological, and terrorist-inspired supporting sicknesses. Remember, tax-exempt status is totally contingent on acting in the public interest. So the president already pulling $2 billion in grants, federal grants to that school. Of course, Columbia University already had to go through this. Next up is Harvard. Until these schools get it right, you can't be promoting terrorist organizations. That's terrible. I mean, these are criminal organizations, and it's awful to see that people are so brainwashed to think that you should support a group like Hamas. Makes no sense to anybody that is a common sense thinker, which is a majority of the world. And what I mean by that is the free world. You know, the people of Brazil, even though they're under Lula, who is not the great Bolsonaro, who is a friend of Trump, those people in Brazil, they want common sense leaders. They understand that it's not good to be cheering or protesting for people that support Hamas. And then you look at anybody around the world. I think of a lot of countries, the people of the world at the end of the day. And I just know that we're just glad to be Americans, and we're proud to be Americans here in this nation where we have freedom running and ruling the day under President Trump. All right, so it's 12:41. As we get ready for our next live interview, I was thinking about next year's midterms, that we should make the 2026 midterms too big to rig, just like the past election for 2024. We already know that the midterms should and will go in our favor. We see all the wins that are happening. We see that people are fed up with the leftist policies, and the Democrats are trying to figure out what to do next. But at the end of the day, making the midterms in November of next year too big to rig, making this vote just as important as the election, the general election vote of 2024 of November 5th. The reason being, we have to have Congress, we have to have the House, the Senate, all still on the favor or on the side of Team America, President Trump. So we have to really build up into that midterm as an important vote, not to just sit back and be like, well, President Trump's in office, everything's going to be okay. Well, having the House and the Senate on the side of the right side of history is very important. So making 2026 midterms too big to rig, I think, is really important as well. As we saw that leading up to President Trump's great election victory in all of the rallies in the campaign season, we saw that so many times where he would talk about making it too big to rig. And we saw all the signs, and it was great to see that and experience that here at Right Side. So on the president's schedule today, the president will sign executive orders at 2:30 at the Oval Office. Then at 3 o'clock, we'll have live coverage right here at Right Side Broadcasting Network as the president participates in a Commander-in-Chief Trophy presentation to the Navy midshipmen, the United States Naval Academy, of course. So that'll be at the east room of the White House. It's kind of cool to see the serious things that happen at the White House and then the fun sports events. I mean, you've had racing champions there. You had the LA Dodgers there, the Ohio State Buckeyes. Now the Navy midshipmen after winning against the Army. So it'd be cool to see that as well. So it's 12:43 Eastern Time. Let's go through some of the Truth Social posts on Truth Social by President Trump recently, speaking about our great farmers. Our farmers are great, he says, but because of their greatness, they are always put on the front line with our adversaries, such as China, whenever there is a trade negotiation, or in this case, a trade war. The same thing happened in my first term. China was brutal to our farmers. These patriots just want to hold on and have a great trade deal and see that made. I rewarded our farmers with a payment of $28 billion, all through the China deal. It was a great transaction for the USA until crooked Joe Biden came in and didn't enforce it. China largely reneged on the deal, although they behaved during the Trump administration, only buying a portion of what they agreed to buy. The president goes on to say they had zero respect for the crooked Biden administration, and who can blame them for that? Interestingly, they just reneged on the big Boeing deal, saying that they will not take possession of fully committed to aircraft. The USA will protect our farmers. So President Trump on Truth Social earlier today, about an hour ago, and again talking about Harvard, saying they should lose its tax-exempt status and be taxed as a political entity if it keeps pushing political, ideological, and terrorist-inspired supporting sickness. Remember, tax-exempt status is totally contingent on acting in the public interest. So that on Truth Social. Let's go to our next live interview on the fly here, 12:45, Tuesday, April 15th. We'll get to Troy Miller, the CEO of the National Religious Broadcasters. Troy, thank you so much for joining us. You know, it's quite the day today. You know, when I think of National Religious Broadcasters, I'm already thinking of Rush Limbaugh right now because of what a great job he did as a conservative and as a believer himself. Sir, your thoughts about Rush and also just moving forward this week with Holy Week? Okay, sir, we don't hear you on audio right now. We don't hear you on audio, so we're going to get that on the slide.
Is that better?
Here. Yep, that is better.
There we go.
Let's re-rack and try it again. Your thoughts, sir?
Yeah, I think Rush was a great commentator, and he was a great conservative, and he was also a very supportive of his Christian faith and faith in general. And he really understood how to communicate to the masses. Rush really made AM radio kind of really very famous, and AM radio today carries on as a top communication for conservative and Christian talk and teach. So, and look, you're right. We're heading into Holy Week. This is probably one of the most important weeks on the Christian calendar and for Christians, because this is the week, as we all know, that Christ sacrificed his life in replacement for ours. And so we celebrate that. That's very important to us. We were so happy to see the statement the president put out. Just an incredible statement the White House did. I think you could go back into history. You might have to go back all the way to the Founding Fathers to find anything that succinct, Christian, and theologically correct talking about Easter week.
Exactly. So isn't it awesome that we have a commander-in-chief that has a White House faith office that just last week, or just a few days ago actually, Karoline Leavitt, there was someone recording, she was praying with the team and praying to Jesus, not being afraid or ashamed of the name of Jesus Christ of Nazareth, praying and then going out there before the press. I mean, it's just something you don't see every day, especially when it comes to, the high profile of the White House.
Yeah, well, you certainly haven't seen it in the White House profile the last 4 years, if not even going back farther than that. And then, and just across government, look, this president has done an incredible job of erasing the fear that people have had in the government to have their faith lived out. He's shown it himself. He's appointed so many people of strong faith to key positions. Karoline Leavitt's one of them. We look at Mike Huckabee, who was just recently confirmed as the ambassador to Israel. You can look at Marco Rubio. You can just look at across the board, people of faith are not only people of faith in positions, but people of faith who are not afraid to express that in a public setting.
And so here's the thing. If you and I were doing an interview in China right now, or we were doing an interview in any country that is anti-speaking about your faith, I don't even know if this would be able to air, first of all. But, I mean, right. Do we really realize what we have here? And I know it's more of a rhetorical question, but do we really realize that?
We don't realize what we have here. And I'll tell you this, here's the really sad, scary part about it. We're rapidly becoming the only country that you could air this kind of interview and this kind of program. You can't do it across Europe. Europe today has gone in completely weaponized against any kind of Christian faith or Christian values and morality it's held. You can't do it north of us in Canada. You might be able to do it in countries in South America. Certainly can't do it in Muslim countries. And we should understand that very foundation, those religious, the freedoms that we hold, the free exercise thereof in the religious and the freedom of speech are so fundamental to who we are as a culture and a country.
It's so true. It's so true. Great points there. Including, let's throw in the United Kingdom. I mean, it seems as if, maybe if you say anything against another religion or whatever, it's like, oh my gosh, you're going to go to jail for that. I mean, we are holding on to our freedom here in this country. I know this is what's interesting, sir, and I want to get your thoughts on it too. It's like the 8 billion people versus the 800. The 800 are those that are the dictatorial, those that are putting their thumb down on the people. It seems as if the people, though, of Iran or China or Brazil or anywhere just want to be free and be able to say something and not be fearing for their lives. Do you agree, generally speaking, in that analogy, the 8 billion of the free world versus just the few that are trying to have all that stinking power?
Oh, absolutely. It's always been the power hungry, the dictators, the tyrants of the world. And then look today, also the quote elites, the educational elites, who always have this mentality that they feel like that they know what's better for them and what's better for the people than the people know themselves. And that's the whole root of the problem, is that they lord it over them. And we see it here in the U.S. That's what the education, the elites do here. We know what's better for you than you know what's for yourself. They don't know that people really do know how to manage themselves and live their own lives.
Exactly. So when you look at it, I read this book by T.S. Dixon, The Woke Mind Viruses. He talks about Darwinism and Marxism and Nietzsche and all them, and all these people, that's where the root of liberalism, that's the root of communism, that's the root of trying to silence Christians, to persecute Christians, but also persecute Jews, the Old Testament, the New Testament. And to your point, we're speaking so freely here in America right now, but this isn't something you hear on mainstream media, do you?
No, you don't hear it on mainstream media. Mainstream media, well, first of all, they speak negative, all they can negativity on Christianity and Judaism today. So, because look, the left knows, the progressives know that the last firewall in front of them from stonewalling and rolling over this country is Christianity. It's the Judeo-Christian foundation. They have to get rid of that in this country before they can take all the control that they want to. And so that's why you saw the weaponization against government. You saw the weaponization of corporate America, and you see the weaponization of mainstream media against Christianity in this country.
With God, though, all things are possible. We thank God for being on the side of anybody that's free, that would just call on his name and be saved, right? I mean, it's that simple. Sometimes people want to make it really confusing. I mean, look at the robber on the cross next to Jesus. He just was like, hey, remember me when you're in paradise. He put his faith in him right there, and Jesus said, I'll see you in paradise. Can you believe it? It was that quick.
Yep. And there's a great sermon by Alistair Begg that says when that guy got to heaven and they asked him, hey, why should I let you in? He said, because the guy next to me on the cross said, I'll see you in paradise. That was as simple as it got. I will see you in paradise. And he said, yep, come on in. Heaven is for you, because Christ died for our sins. He paid our penalty. He did what we couldn't do. And then he was raised him from the dead to give us the assurance that death does not have the final answer.
That is the truth, and that is exactly the message that President Trump and Melania Trump shared in a proclamation for this Holy Week just the other day.
That's right.
Troy, I love you, man, and I want you back on this show as soon as possible. Also, can you share with us one scripture that really speaks to you, or maybe just one that you read recently that really speaks to you?
Look, the Apostle Paul, when he was talking to the church in Galatians, and I just love Galatians. He's talking to the church in Galatians. He talks about our faith. And I was just reading this, and he said, look, I think it's in the 3rd chapter, and he said, we have to remember that God Himself has advocated on our behalf, God Himself. And that's for us as Christians that we have to remember, as you said, if God is on our side, who can be against us? God Himself is advocating for us.
Amen. And I think of a scripture as well, that God looks to and through the entire earth for a heart that is completely His. Just to think about that thought, that the Creator, God Himself, looks throughout the earth right now, and He's looking for somebody's heart that is completely His. That's Amen. Pretty awesome. And we could commune Amen. With Him. Thanks be to God. Thanks be to Jesus. What a Holy Amen. Week. We love Holy Week. We love every day that we're alive here. We're thanking God for all the blessings. Sir, thank you so much. Troy Miller, CEO of the National Religious Broadcasters. I'd love to have you on again, sir.
Thank you. I'd love to be with you.
Thank you. All right, so we're about 5 minutes out from the top of the hour, and we'll be hearing from Karoline Leavitt, who also is a Christian and talks about her faith. She had a great interview on the 700 Club. David Brody did that interview the other day, and it was great to hear that, again, On the other side of that blue door to the left, and I spoke about this earlier in the week, and I said that they pray right before they go out there. And it's pretty awesome. And if you missed that actual prayer, it's Margot Martin recorded it. You can go to my Truth Social if you'd like. It's at Matthew Alvarez. Just scroll down a little bit, maybe 3 or 4 posts ago, and it's that moment of what she does with that team, the Office of Communications at the White House. And yes, we're talking a lot about faith today, and we have freedom of speech to do that. And you know, if you're not a believer, we are welcoming you to be with us here and just watch what we air, what we talk about. We all have our journeys, our stories, and all that kind of thing, but this is not the mainstream media, and it won't ever be. It's awesome to have that freedom to speak about our faith, but also to speak about all the accomplishments that we're seeing by President Trump. Now, we do want to see all of the reformation of America, the reform of this country, when it comes to those 20 core promises that the president has promised us. And we're seeing that all 20 of those promises that I went over the other day are actually already happening, from sealing the border to no men and women's sports and on. But we understand that the deep state's pretty much been dismantled. There's still globalists out there. We still have to take care of business, though, when it comes to protecting and saving our country. That's the job of Pam Bondi and Kash Patel. We also are looking forward to seeing whatever files that Representative Anna Paulina Luna is going to release from the declassification task force that she spoke about. So we're not just saying, oh, yay, Trump every day, but indirectly we are, because what's happening are good things. So why not, right? It's just facts. Boy, it's and see some of the reporters standing there. They, you know, I know some of them. I remember meeting Peter Ducey in Nashville, Tennessee one time. And I've worked alongside a lot of these colleagues and journalists at a number of the Trump rallies. So when we're standing there live, right next to us are CNN or MSNBC. And have I, you know, high-fived or fist bumped some of these people? I have. But that's just the flow of being a colleague. But the content out of their mouth, we don't talk about that, because I disagree 100% with what they're saying. So they are on the side of the lying, they lie, and we're on the side of truth. Now, you have to make your decision. Do you agree with what we're saying? And all we're saying here is that common sense talking point of, we want law and order in our country. We want our border to be sealed. We want to have the faith that we want to have. We want to have more money, or be more healthy, or have our constitutional rights intact, or have the no more weaponization of the DOJ. So these are the basic things we're talking about. And if I were in the Oval Office yesterday, and I'd be congratulating the El Salvador president, Bukele, and President Trump, and then I would ask a question. But still, these journalists, so-called journalists, they're just a bunch of actors. That's what fake news is. If you're fake, you're an actor. They're just trying to drum up some talking point that is rooted in the pit of hell. Anyway, callshe.com/RSBN. You can see that on your screen. When will Bitcoin hit $150,000? That's a good question. But also, there's a lot of great questions on callshe.com/RSBN. So check it out if you'd like. Great sponsor here at Right Side Broadcasting Network. They talk about sports on there, politics, weather, science, technology, all kinds of stuff. So callshe.com/RSBN. Let's go to freetrumpbook.com as well. A lot of great topics there, from President Trump to American greatness to fighting indoctrination to the elections and on. A lot of great information. freetrumpbook.com, a great sponsor at Right Side Broadcasting Network. It is 1 o'clock Eastern time. It's about that time for the press conference for Karoline Leavitt. So we look forward to seeing her arrive there at the podium and share with us, the American people, some of the directives that she's hearing from the president when it comes to what's next for X and Y topic. We'll be hearing that from her. And then, of course, we'll hear some questions from the press there. So it would be interesting if the press would do a little bit of musical chairs. Why not have conservative media or new media or just other media that's in the back shift up to the front? Why does ABC and NBC and CBS sit there in the front? They act like they're holding everybody accountable. Well, they're not holding anybody accountable. They're just trying to push that false narrative. And we saw it yesterday in the Oval Office. And this is the thing about President Trump and Stephen Miller and Marco Rubio and J.D. Vance and Karoline Leavitt. They're not just going to sit there and take it. They flip the script. And it's fun to watch. So we're looking forward to having you watch with us and stream with us here live on Right Side Broadcasting Network. A little bit later at 3 o'clock Eastern, Robert McNeely will be here. He's going to cover the Navy Midshipman Commander-in-Chief Trophy presentation at the East Room of the White House with President Trump. He keeps getting those fun assignments with the sports. I did get one recently, though, with the Auburn Tigers in San Antonio. But that's a fun one. He also got the Florida Panthers NHL Stanley Cup presentation. I'm a big hockey fan. I'm like, come on, Bobby, I want to get on the air for that. Kidding aside, we're seeing, again, a lot of the live reporters getting ready, and they'll be sitting down, of course, and then we'll see Karoline Leavitt take the podium there. If you'd like to donate to Right Side Broadcasting Network, all you have to do is text RSBN to 801-801. So just text RSBN to 801-801 if you'd like to donate to Right Side Broadcasting Network. Of course, we've been around since 2015. All of those rallies, those campaign speeches, those remarks, those great events, and in some cases, as you know, terrible and tragic events. But seeing President Trump overcome all of that, and all of us together, all those years, I know I miss Rally Day. I know you do too. And when we interview people outside in the lines, I totally miss that. However, midterm time, I believe there will be some more rallies. So that will be quite awesome. That's not until next year, but it'll be cool to see again here on Right Side. But if you'd like to donate, just text RSBN to 801-801. All right, let's go to some Truth Social posts on Right Side Broadcasting Network as well. You can see that border crossings hit an all-time record low in March under President Trump. Also, Trump celebrates NVIDIA, so NVIDIA's $500 billion U.S. investment. MAGA support soars in new poll as Trump nears 100 days in office. Trump freezes $2.2 billion to Harvard after it refuses to comply. Trump responds to conviction of illegal immigrant who killed Rachel Morin. These are all articles that you can see on Right Side Broadcasting Network, whether it's at rsbnetwork.com or on our X page, our Truth Social page. A lot of great reporting going on there as we monitor a lot of the live situations that are happening here at the network, but also any breaking news that happens out there beyond the Beltway. I've been looking at, because I really like aviation, and we do get some aviation experts on the network from time to time. But recently, some tragedies and wondering what happened. Recently in New York State, in Florida, and then of course in New York City as well, a helicopter crash, and then two smaller planes went down. Always monitoring those kind of situations, seeing what happened, why it happened, and then also any updates with the FAA or air traffic control when it comes to Sean Duffy with the Department of Transportation, working on getting the best people in the right places and making sure everything is smooth and good for our aviation safety out there. Also, did a story a long time ago in the mainstream media, but it had to do with security at airports, seeing some delivery trucks that were driving onto tarmacs without getting a full check of what's inside the actual truck. We got the actual video footage of all that kind of thing. So just always monitoring anything aviation, just it's something I like to do, and also with weather and meteorology, but that's more for Christina Loren as we see various weather patterns throughout the country. All right, shifting gears. Before I get way off track there, let's go to a number of our sponsors here. Producer, which one should we go to again? All right, let's go to Colonial Metals Group. freegoldguide.com/RSBN. freegoldguide.com/RSBN is the website. If you go there, you'll get a free info kit in the mail. And also, you'll know more about gold and silver as a backup plan to the United States dollar, especially when it comes to your retirement or savings. So having it in that high value of gold and silver. Let's also talk about mypillow.com/RSBN. You see the mattress topper right there. $99.99. Use that promo code RSBN. You'll get that percentage off, up to 50% off everything. There's more than 2,000 products on mypillow.com. All right, so it's 5 minutes after 1 o'clock right now here on Right Side Broadcasting Network. This is RSBN Live. We go live wall to wall when it comes to a number of events, including press briefings or when there's a live feed for an executive order signing. If there's not a live feed, we'll always tape playback that for you to see exactly what the president is signing and what he's talking about when it comes to various mini press conferences. Also, later today, the event with the Navy. Again, that starts at 3 o'clock. Right here on Right Side Broadcasting Network. Now, upcoming on Thursday, the Italian president, Giorgia Meloni, will join President Trump there at the White House. So that would be two leaders in this week alone. That has got to be upwards of 15 to 20, I think, at this point, of foreign leaders stopping by at the White House as we continue to see the president making America great again with America First policies, but also working with world leaders where he needs to in order to get that job done. Priority number one being us, we the people. Great to see it here on Right Side Broadcasting Network. All right, let's go again to some of the top headlines that we're following here at Right Side. On Truth Social, when it comes to President Trump's posts, recent posts, speaking a lot about Harvard University taking about $2.2 billion of grant money from Harvard because they just keep on supporting those or allowing students to support these terrorist organizations, which is radicalization of the faith of Islam and seeing that out there at Harvard. So we're seeing the president taking the federal grant money from Harvard, but also he did the same thing over at Columbia. At the end of the day, that's part of the 20 promises to the American people. One of them is right here: deport pro-Hamas radicals and make our college campuses safe and patriotic again. It's a promise that President Trump shared with the American people on the campaign trail. It's a promise being fulfilled by doing things like taking the federal grant money from Harvard, from Columbia, as these woke schools need to get in line with what we the people voted for, President Trump and his agenda. So we'll hear more about that here in just a second from Karoline Leavitt at the White House press briefing in Washington, D.C. All right, let's get to those posts from President Trump here shortly, as I know you can follow along with me if you'd like, as we are standing by for the great Karoline Leavitt there on the podium at 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue. Again, let's look at border crossings hitting an all-time record low in March, according to the president. That was about 5 hours ago that he posted that, but it's interesting. You never know when you're going to get a great post from the president, whether it's late at night, early in the morning, during the day. He gets to speak to the American people directly with Truth Social. And then, of course, the X account as well, where he has about 103 million followers on that one and upwards of about 10 million on Truth Social, as that site continues to grow, that platform for conservatives and really for anyone that wants to go on there. We've seen people like Gavin Newsom on Truth Social, which is interesting, but it is what it is. And it's still a great site, and so is Right Side Broadcasting Network's RSBN or RSBnetwork.com website, if you'd like to go to that. Let's also go live right now to the press briefing room. Let's listen in as we're getting ready for Karoline Leavitt live at the White House.
No, she's from the hill. Yeah. Her last time her walking going here. So we all looked at the time I was here. We were looking at the rest.
We still have a lot of time. When I learned my husband is you need to stop.
Did you?
Actually,
Was that what the first one?
The first one. Anyway, but you have to work out.
Yeah. Yeah. And, I don't think it's quicker with the second one, but we're within reach of 30. Trying to figure out if it's,
All right, so it's 1:11 Eastern Time, awaiting Karoline Leavitt there. Looking at the Department of Government Efficiency right now, DOGE, of course. There's a contract update out there. Agencies terminated 180 wasteful contracts with a ceiling value of $3.3 billion and savings of $2.6 billion, including an $85.5 thousand EPA contract for live plant maintenance services. The internal EPA team will water them going forward, and also a $265,000 Health and Human Services contract for social media monitoring, subscription training, and platform setup. Holy smokes. Contract update. So that's a lot of savings. We're talking billions of dollars. So DOGE still going at it, getting it done for us. And we're seeing that with every department across the executive branch, the cabinet positions from the DOD to HHS, HUD, and on. Also, great work by the Department of Veteran Affairs canceling an unreasonably priced multi-year $15.3 million services contract for salary survey data and analysis. Let's run that by you again. Great work by the Department of Veteran Affairs canceling an unreasonably priced multi-year $15.3 million service contract for salary survey data and analysis. $15.3 million of our tax dollars going toward some survey. Well, DOGE, again, doing great for the American people. Let's go to one more. Great work by Secretary Wright. The new energy policy caps university grant overhead at 15%, consistent with for-profit, nonprofit, and state and local government awardees. This saves taxpayers more than $400 million a year. It's kind of clear. We see President Trump, we see Elon Musk, we see this Department of everything, every cabinet position, really doing awesome things for our country. And anybody that comes against that makes no sense to me. And I'm sure it makes no sense to you. It's because they have no common sense. So hopefully they will. And hopefully they get woken up. We see a lot of people, though, that were woken up over the past 4 years with the difference between what it was like under President Trump under the first administration, then what it was like under Biden, as Robert McNeely perfectly calls Biden now. He simply calls him AutoPen. And then now we have President Trump, only less than 100 days still in office as the president here in the second administration. Quite wild to see the amount of things that have happened in the positive win column for this country. It's quite awesome to see. Let's go to one of the sponsors quickly before we go to the press conference there. Let's go to angelpaste.com. A lot of great products there. Angelpaste.com. Use the RSBN promo code. You see the Miracle Cream there. There's other products as well. Out of Spring, Texas, they hire military veterans. Go to angelpaste.com. Check it out. Use the RSBN promo code for quite the discount on that product. All right, so 1:14 Eastern, Tuesday, April 15th. Let's go to a number of other posts that we're seeing, not only from DOGE, but also the Department of Defense, as we know that Pete Hegseth doing a great job there with the southern border, seeing the U.S. Army, the Marines, you see the National Guard, the Coast Guard, also the Navy, in some cases Air Force and Space Force, all taking care of our border. It is a lockdown border now. People are not crossing like they used to be at all. March is a record-setting time for the amount of border crossings, which are very few. Now the situation is getting the drug cartel, the terrorist organization, to stop bringing in the narcotics via fentanyl as well. But we see our military along the southern border. Will something happen down there? Who knows? But at the end of the day, the drug cartel have to be shaking in their boots, because at the end of the day, the boots on the ground of the U.S. Army are right there on the other side of that border, and you don't want to mess with the U.S. Army. So that is going to hopefully stop the fentanyl crossing our border, claiming the lives of people across this country. And also, interestingly enough, China, the precursor of the fentanyl, the ingredient that they have, is also part of this whole situation too. So a lot going on. You pick a topic, right? From the economy to the southern border to constitutional rights to foreign policy, domestic policy, America First agenda, the weaponization against people of the government, that kind of thing that President Trump is eliminating from that happening. But there's so many things going on out there, and we're going to hear a lot of the topics discussed by Karoline Leavitt here at any minute, as the press conference scheduled for 1 p.m. Eastern. It's now 1:16, of course, as they organize and pray before the press conference. We'll hear it all live right here on Right Side Broadcasting Network. Programming note, of course, at 3 o'clock. Robert McNeely will be sharing coverage with you in regards to the Commander-in-Chief Trophy presentation for the Navy midshipmen. That'll be happening at about 3:30, but our coverage starts at 3 o'clock right here on Right Side. So if you saw yesterday's great event outside at the South Lawn with the Ohio State Buckeyes, well, today it'll be inside at the East Room of the White House, where the president usually holds those kind of events, but also historic executive order signings like No Men and Women's Sports, and on and on and on. So we'll be seeing a lot of those events at the East Room of the White House, also the Rose Garden, and at the South Lawn. As today, of course, Tuesday, April 15th, let's look at some more headlines that we're following. We also, from time to time, we like to see libs of TikTok doing a great job as well out there, posting some various content that is pretty interesting as we monitor a lot of news happening. So ICE in Baltimore has arrested a twice deported Guatemalan illegal alien who's charged with murder and assault. He was arrested in 2024, and the local law enforcement refused to honor the ICE detainer request and released him back onto the streets. But thankfully, ICE has re-arrested someone that was charged with murder and assault. That happening just recently. Also, the State Department and DOJ just canceled 139 wasteful grants worth $215 million, including $1.4 million for preventing internet fragmentation in Brazil, $750,000 for enabling civil society resilience and adaptation in Kyrgyzstan, and then $1 million for building trust and keeping hope alive in Sri Lanka. Holy smokes! Let's continue this list as we wait for Karoline Leavitt. This is from Libs of TikTok, but they're also citing, of course, the State Department and DOJ. So they just canceled 139 wasteful grants worth $215 million. So this is the work of the State Department and DOJ. Let's continue on with that list here. $2 million for advancing democratic culture in Armenia, $5.2 million for anti-disinformation program in the UK. Let's stop at that one. So there was this $5.2 million anti-disinformation program in the UK of our money going to Keir Starmer and the United Kingdom. Our money was going to an anti-disinformation program. Interesting that disinformation is simply knowing that you're lying and sharing that as truth. It's as simple as that. It's not misinformation. Misinformation is a mistake of sharing information to the world, maybe as a news reporter, but then realizing, okay, that's misinformation. That was a mistake. That's wrong. Here's the correction. That happens. Nobody's perfect. It is what it is. But disinformation is the outright lie from a news organization or from a politician that is false, that is a lie, but it comes out as they're presenting it as truth. So we were funding a $5.2 million anti-disinformation program in the United Kingdom. Right now in the United Kingdom, if you say something a little bit about another religion or just something a little bit that they don't agree with, you might get a knock at the door. We don't want that in this country. That's the thing that we hold on to here in this country is our freedom. And so I'm glad that the State Department and DOJ pulled that $5.2 million of our money that was going toward helping the UK for an anti-disinformation program. Last point about that. The left-wing Democrat leaders and some of the media will always say that's disinformation that they're sharing and spreading. They should point the fingers at themselves because they're the ones that know that this is a lie and they're calling us liars when we're actually sharing truth. It gets convoluted. I know it gets a little confusing, but we're really dissecting right now what we've been seeing and dealing with from the mainstream media for decades. And the information is so important. That's why it's called InfoWars with Alex Jones and all that, the info war. That's true. There's an info war. I know most of you that are watching know this, but to those of you that are maybe used to be watching MSNBC and now watching us, you're like, okay, this makes sense. So we're waking up in this country and we just don't want to have to deal with that kind of government or that kind of media. And that's why it was such a huge political comeback and a win for President Trump to call out the fake news and to be a truthful and transparent and common sense president, just like you're going to see here with Karoline Leavitt, who is truthful, transparent, and common sense, in a way a reporter, but a spokesperson for the leader of the free world. So looking forward to hearing the words that she's going to say and the questions and answers from some of the fake news press, but some of the conservative media in there, as it's 1:22 Eastern time. Let's go to freetrumpbook.com, freetrumpbook.com. If you like to go to that website, there's a lot of great books there, including fighting indoctrination. So it's good to show and kind of say, hey, just because a teacher that is woke or somebody in the media or somebody in entertainment said it's this way, this is what you should believe, indoctrinating thoughts, it's kind of cool to see these different books that kind of break it down for you to kind of get that detox of our mind, that cleansing of our mind to get on the right side of history, which is simple stuff. It's common sense stuff, right? So you can get that book right there at freetrumpbook.com. So there's a kid's guide to President Trump, fighting indoctrination, American greatness, and on right there on your screen, freetrumpbook.com. Hope you're having a great week. It's 1:23, Tuesday, April 15th. This is Holy Week. If you saw earlier in our broadcast, the National Religious Broadcasters CEO, Troy Miller, joined us. Kind of a great conversation with him. Robert McNeely, our RSBN host, joined us as well via phone. You'll see him a little bit later at 3 o'clock, just talking about various scripture and why this week is so important. But, you know, every day is that we have a new day with waking up and thanking God for a new day and hopefully kicking some serious butt out there for our country as we see some more people show up there at the press briefing room. But, you know, creating and having new business and having freedom of thought and being able to practice our faith and be able to support who we want to support when it comes to this country. It's great to see that happening out there. As it's 1:24, let's move on with that State Department and DOJ cancellation of 139 wasteful grants worth $215 million, including $1.7 million for independent media for peace and democracy in Europe. Again, these are our dollars that were going to contracts in other countries. Breaking that down for you, thanks to Libs of TikTok for breaking this down and putting this all on here. 1.7 million for Be Media Wise in Bulgaria. Why is there such a focus on the media? And isn't that interesting? It's all about the messaging of what information gets to the people, right? Because if we all start saying it's this way and Trump says it's this way, but it's not true, and all of you start believing that, well, that's not good, right? It's sticking with the common sense of all of this. And that's the thing. When you stick to truth and common sense, you can't go wrong with that. You can't go wrong with, hey, I want our country to be safer, so let's have law and order. Let's have a closed border. Let's have our constitutional rights. Let's not let the DOJ, be weaponized. And we know that it's not now. But holy smokes, that was quite the past 4 years. But we have to continually win in this administration, and also for the midterms coming up in 2026, making that too big to rig, so we can continue the America First agenda right here in our country. Let's go to some more of the information here on Libs of TikTok. $740,000 for a feminist free expression initiative in Tunisia. How about $900,000 of our money used to go for a place for women to join to organize in Mauritania? Let's go with one more here. I'll pick a random one. $750,000 of our dollars used to go to building the migrant domestic worker-led movement in Lebanon. Wow. Talk about money going to the wrong places. So we're, again, seeing a lot of awesome things go on, including the energy independence here in our country, with just the other day, the president signing a number of executive orders when it comes to that, including the power grid, and also talking about beautiful, clean coal. We're seeing places like companies like Honda and Toyota manufacture their cars here for Americans. So there are no tariffs for those people that decide to build here, produce here, manufacture here. And we see that happening every day. So it's awesome to see that. As we await the White House press briefing, it's 1:27, the bottom of the hour. Let's go to a commercial break. We'll be right back here on Right Side Broadcasting Network.
Welcome to Right Side Broadcasting Network, your trusted conservative news outlet. At RSBN, we deliver the truth when the mainstream media falls short. Since 2015, we've proudly broadcasted every single one of President Trump's iconic MAGA rallies, bringing you the excitement and energy live before anyone else. By watching RSBN, you get an unfiltered front row view of the action on the ground. We interview the crowds to give a voice to millions of Americans just like you. We show you President Trump's speeches in their entirety, free from interruptions and censorship. We cover the stories that matter to you with the integrity and passion you deserve. Thank you for choosing RSBN as your home for America First News. Together, we stand strong, united, and informed. So join us and be part of the right side of history.
President Trump is keeping his promises and saving America. And your kids can learn all about it for free with a new Kids Guide to President Trump. This fun guide shows kids all the steps President Trump is taking to put America back on top of the world stage, including building a strong economy, protecting our borders, and negotiating trade deals. It's an exciting way for kids to learn about President Trump's outstanding leadership.
I apologize for my tardiness, but I came directly from the Oval. I have some newsy updates to share from the president, which I know you all very much value and appreciate. So let's get to it. The president promised millions of Christians across the country on the campaign trail that he would create a White House faith office when he returned to the White House, and he has delivered on that promise. The White House Faith Office has put together an extraordinary week-long celebration currently underway for Holy Week ahead of Easter Sunday. The president signed a Holy Week proclamation, filmed a special presidential video message, and will be hosting a pre-Easter dinner tomorrow night and a White House staff Easter worship service on Thursday. The president and the First Lady are honored to continue the tradition of the White House Easter egg roll, which will take place on the South Lawn next Monday. In other news, President Trump is turning America into a manufacturing superpower again. Yesterday, there was a monumental announcement by NVIDIA, one of the largest companies in the world. This is just the latest example. For the first time ever, chip-making giant NVIDIA will produce AI supercomputers entirely in the United States as part of its pledge to produce $50 billion worth of AI infrastructure in our country over the next 4 years. With their manufacturing partners, they have commissioned more than 1 million square feet of manufacturing space to build and test NVIDIA Blackwell chips in the great state of Arizona and AI supercomputers in the great state of Texas. NVIDIA's founder and CEO Jensen Huang touted how the engines of the world's AI infrastructure are being built in the United States for the first time. This is the Trump effect. This follows trillions in other U.S. investments announced already, including $500 billion from Apple in U.S.-based manufacturing and training, $100 billion from TSMC and U.S.-based chips manufacturing, and the $500 billion private investment led by OpenAI, Oracle, and SoftBank in artificial intelligence infrastructure. Under President Trump, we're going to produce the cars, the ships, the chips, the airplanes, minerals, and medicines that we need right here in America at the hands of American workers. On the border, President Trump continues to break records and protect our homeland. According to CBP, Border Patrol apprehensions along the southwest border for the entire month of March 2025 were lower than the first 2 days of March 2024 under Joe Biden. Incredible law enforcement officers are arresting violent illegal aliens from American communities every day. Here are a few examples from the latest ICE report, which I received this morning. ICE Los Angeles arrested a 54-year-old citizen of Mexico convicted of rape by threat, sodomy with a person under 14 years, and kidnapping in San Jose, California. ICE Houston has arrested a 23-year-old citizen of Mexico convicted of predatory criminal sexual assault of a child in Cook County, Illinois. ICE Houston arrested a 64-year-old citizen of Honduras convicted of murder in Los Angeles County, California. ICE Chicago arrested a 49-year-old citizen of Guatemala convicted of assault and arson in Prince Williams, Virginia, not far from here. ICE Denver arrested a 36-year-old citizen of Mexico who is registered as a sex offender and has been convicted of sexual assault of a child in Lake County, Colorado. ICE Baltimore arrested a 50-year-old citizen of China convicted of sex trafficking in Bel Air, Maryland. And ICE Boston arrested a 46-year-old citizen of Jamaica convicted of 3 counts of rape of a child and 2 counts of indecent assault and battery of a child under 14 in Boston, Massachusetts. President Trump and our administration will not rest until every single violent illegal alien is removed from our country. The safety of the American people is too important to settle for anything less. On that note, the Democrat and media outrage over the deportation of Abrego Garcia, an MS-13 El Salvadorian illegal alien criminal who is hiding in Maryland, has been nothing short of despicable. Based on the sensationalism of many of the people in this room, you would think we deported a candidate for Father of the Year. That's because, unfortunately, many in this country care more about this quote-unquote Maryland father, a legal alien MS-13 gang member, than a Maryland mother and an American citizen who was brutally murdered at the hands of a different illegal alien. Of course, I am referring to Rachel Morin. And if you didn't see yesterday, a Maryland jury found illegal alien Victor Antonio Martinez Hernandez guilty of murdering Rachel Morin in August of 2023. She was a 37-year-old mother of 5 who was jogging in an otherwise safe community northeast of Baltimore when this monster ambushed, strangled, and beat her to death before stuffing her brutalized body in a tunnel drain. The Morin family finally got justice yesterday, but they will never get Rachel back. Our hearts go out to Rachel's family, her 5 children, and her mother, Patty, who has suffered the unimaginable loss of her daughter. In case you missed it last week, President Trump signed a national security presidential memorandum directing federal agencies administering federal land on the border to make land available to the Defense Department in a new national defense area. This followed the president's Day 1 executive order committing his administration to marshal all available resources and authorities to stop the unprecedented flood of illegal aliens into our country and to obtain complete operational control of the borders of the United States of America. Once again, the president is fulfilling another key promise. This new national defense area spans more than 170 miles across our border in New Mexico. But in the coming weeks, this administration will add more than 90 miles in the state of Texas. This national defense area will enhance our ability to detect, interdict, and prosecute the illegal aliens, criminal gangs, and terrorists who were able to invade our country without consequence for the past 4 years under the Biden administration. It will also bolster our defenses against fentanyl and other dangerous narcotics that have been poisoning our communities. With all of this work being done to make America great again, we continue to see a positive response from the American public. A brand new poll published from the Daily Mail and JL Partners this morning found that President Trump's approval rating is at an all-time high. That's because the president is working tirelessly to keep his promises to the American people, as I just saw him doing today in the Oval Office. We have a reporter in our new media seat today, Matthew Foldy. I like your boots, Matt, who is the editor-in-chief of the Washington Reporter. Washington Reporter is a new, fast-growing outlet that breaks stories about legislation and interviews leaders in Congress and across the administration. The publication's readership includes the highest levels of business and government. And with that, please kick us off, Matt.
And we've interviewed you as well. So, Karoline, thanks so much for having me here on behalf of our readership and the millions of Americans who I think appreciate what you're doing with the new media seat here and making this a more accessible briefing room. I'm curious with Harvard. We saw the Trump administration today announced it's cutting around $2 billion, or freezing $2 billion in funds to Harvard because the campus has serious problems with violence and with anti-Semitism. We saw former President Obama, side with Harvard, which rejected the Trump administration's demands. I'm curious, where does the administration see this going with Harvard and with other colleges and universities in America that are refusing to reform in wake of the sort of craziness that we've seen take over some of them?
Thank you, Matt, for being here, and thanks for the question. When it comes to Harvard, the president's position on this is grounded in common sense, in the basic principle that Jewish American students, or students of any faith, should not be illegally harassed and targeted on our nation's college campuses. And we unfortunately saw that illegal discrimination take place on the campus of Harvard. There are countless examples to prove it, particularly with the stunning confession by then Harvard President Claudine Gay, who said that bullying and harassment depended on the context. The president at that time made it clear to the American public he was not going to tolerate illegal harassment and anti-Semitism taking place in violations of federal law. So the president made it clear to Harvard, follow federal law, no longer break Title VI, which was passed by Congress to ensure no student can be discriminated against on the basis of race, and you will receive federal funding. Unfortunately, Harvard has not taken the president or the administration's demands seriously. All the president is asking, don't break federal law, and then you can have your federal funding. I think the president is also begging a good question. More than $2 billion out the door to Harvard when they have a more than $50 billion endowment. Why are the American taxpayers subsidizing a university that has billions of dollars in the bank already? And we certainly should not be funding a place where such grave anti-Semitism exists.
And I'm curious, you had just mentioned Rachel Morin, and I'm a Maryland man, and I think most Marylanders appreciate what you were saying today. We've seen that Chris Van Hollen, who was Rachel Morin's senator, basically threatening to fly to El Salvador to press for the release of someone who was in America illegally. And not as much sort of from him about Rachel Morin's horrific murder and the verdict that was, I think, rightly reached yesterday. What does the administration think about the priorities we're seeing from Senate Democrats in terms of illegal immigrants instead of the work that agencies like ICE and DHS are doing with the Trump administration?
It's mind-boggling, the priorities of the modern-day Democrat Party. I think it's atrocious that you have Democrats in Congress on Capitol Hill who swear an oath to protect their constituents and to serve them in Washington, D.C., spending more time defending illegal immigrant gang members than their own constituents and law-abiding American citizens like Rachel Morin. And I saw the president personally on the campaign trail, and I continue to see him in his role as president of the United States, put American families first, reach out to the victims, the families of victims at the hands of illegal immigrant crime. And frankly, the actions and the words of the Democrat Party prove they could not care less about the American public. And maybe if they did, they'd see a bit higher approval ratings right now. Thanks for being here with us today. Peter.
Thank you, Karoline. To follow up on something that you just said, why do Ivy League schools get so much federal funding?
It's a very good question, and it's a question the president has obviously raised in his discussions and negotiations with not just Harvard, but also Columbia and many other Ivy League institutions. We have the Anti-Semitism Task Force, which the president promised and delivered on. The Anti-Semitism Task Forces across the government, representatives from various federal agencies who meet on a weekly basis to discuss the question that you just raised. And I think a lot of Americans are wondering why their tax dollars are going to these universities when they are not only indoctrinating our nation's students, but also allowing such egregious illegal behavior to occur.
To follow up on immigration, deporting American citizens to Central American prisons, Is it legal, or do you need to change the law to do it?
Well, it's another question that the president has raised. It's a legal question that the president is looking into. And he talked about this yesterday with his meeting with President Bukele in the Oval Office. He would only consider this, if legal, for Americans who are the most violent, egregious, repeat offenders of crime, who nobody in this room wants living in their communities.
And then there's this CHNV thing. President Biden let more than 530,000 people from Cuba, Haiti, Nicaragua, Venezuela into the U.S. with this CHNV program. He did it with the stroke of a pen. And now a judge will not let President Trump undo it with the stroke of a pen. So are you guys going to give all 530,000 plus people individual deportation hearings, or are you just going to try to deport them?
I spoke to White House counsel's office about this morning, because obviously another rogue district court judge is trying to block the administration's mass deportation efforts with this latest injunction. We will fight this in the court of law, and we will ensure that every individual who illegally entered our country and was really taken advantage of by the previous administration because they abused the parole system in this country to fast track legal status, as they said, for these illegal immigrants, and they completely abused our legal system. Many of these paroled individuals were then given temporary protective status, which the intention of that TPS was only supposed to be used in times of war or storm or destruction in the home countries of these migrants. It was completely abused. These migrants came here for economic reasons, and they illegally entered our country, and the president is not going to tolerate that. And so we will continue to focus on deporting as many individuals as we can. Jennifer.
One on tariffs and one on Russia. Can you give us any sort of an update on which deals are in hand or are close? Which countries are reaching a deal on tariffs? And then on Russia, can you give us an update on what the agreement was with Russia? The president yesterday said that he thinks we'll be seeing some very good deals very soon. Can you talk a little bit about what Russia agreed to?
Sure. I don't want to get ahead of our United States Trade Ambassador and Secretary of Commerce, the Secretary of Treasury, all the great individuals who are working incredibly hard to cut these good trade deals. And the president's deeply involved in this as well. He has made it clear to his trade team he wants to personally sign off on all of these deals too. And so I don't want to get ahead of them on announcements. But obviously, as you've heard from numerous administration officials, there have been many talks with countries. We've had more than 15 deals, pieces of paper put on the table, proposals that are actively being considered. And as we've said consistently, more than 75 countries have reached out. So there's a lot of work to do. We very much understand that, but we do believe that we can announce some deals very soon.
And then on Russia, can you say, did Russia agree to anything with Special Envoy Steve Witkoff?
I don't want to get ahead of those negotiations as well. What I can tell you is that they were a productive conversation was had. As the presidential envoy Steve Witkoff said last night, he believes that Russia wants to end this war, and the president believes that as well. There is incentive for Russia to end this war, and perhaps that could be economic partnerships with the United States, but we need to see a ceasefire first, and the president and the presidential envoy Witkoff made that very clear to the Russians. Gabe.
Thank you, Caroline. And I also want to thank your press office for releasing that information that you cited up there regarding the ICE arrests over the last couple of days. And I have them right here, but what I might ask is, why not release the same information for those who were deported to El Salvador?
Well, first of all, the information was released by the Department of Homeland Security. The individuals on the flights to El Salvador are foreign terrorists, and those are counterterrorism operations. They are much different than the arrests and final order of removals that you see on a day-to-day basis that law enforcement agents are conducting around the country.
That information was not, to that detail, was not released by DHS, though.
I just told you the reason. It was a counterterrorism operation, a deportation of foreign terrorists, not illegal criminals who have been convicted of heinous crimes living in our American communities. It's two different things. Foreign terrorist, illegal immigrant criminal, two different things, two different definitions. You should look them up. Christian, go ahead.
Yeah, thanks, Caroline. Does the president support raising the corporate tax rate to pay for all these other tax cuts he wants to see move through Congress?
Look, I've seen this idea proposed. I've heard this idea discussed, but I don't believe the president has made a determination on whether he supports it or not.
And then secondly, do you have any information on the status of Eden Alexander? Hamas says they lost contact with the unit guarding him
following an Israeli airstrike earlier today?
I don't have updates. I have not seen that report, but I can certainly check in with our National Security Council. I have spoken to the president about Eden Alexander, and he's made it very clear to our national security team that finding him is a priority, but unfortunately I don't have any updates to share. But it's a very important matter, and certainly we can check in. Sure.
Hi. How concerned is the president that a federal judge could hold a Trump administration official in contempt of court for defying deportation orders?
We are complying with all court orders. So I see what you're trying to do there with that question, but we're very confident that every action taken by this administration is within the confines of the law, and we continue to comply with the court's orders. And you have seen that, and the president made that clear yesterday in the Oval Office with President Bukele. Sure.
Thanks, Caroline. Could you, just going back to El Salvador, could you just explain to us a little bit more about the legal basis on which you may be able to send U.S. citizens to prison there? I know you said President Trump is looking at it, but can you explain to us a little bit more about how that might be possible?
We're looking at it, and when I have more for you to share, I certainly will. Sure.
Still going off the El Salvador questions, yesterday in the Oval Office, administration officials made it very clear that El Salvador is responsible for Mr. Abrego Garcia, yet El Salvador's president said we're not going to do anything with him. So my question is, who is responsible for this man and where he's going to end up?
Well, no. First of all, President Bukele said that he is not going to smuggle a foreign terrorist back into the United States of America, as many in this room in the Democrat Party seemingly want him to do. Abrego Garcia was a foreign terrorist. He is an MS-13 gang member. He was engaged in human trafficking. He illegally came into our country. And so deporting him back to El Salvador was always going to be the end result. There is never going to be a world in which this is an individual who's going to live a peaceful life in Maryland, because he is a foreign terrorist and a MS-13 gang member. Not only have we confirmed that, President Bukele yesterday in the Oval Office confirmed that as well. So he went back to his home country, where he will face consequences for his gang affiliation and his engagement in human trafficking. I'm not sure what is so difficult about this for everyone in the media to understand, and it's appalling, truly appalling, that there has been so much time covering this alleged human trafficker and this gang member, MS-13 gang member. It's truly striking to me. Karen.
Thanks, Caroline. The president was posting on Truth Social today about helping American farmers. And last week in his cabinet meeting, he was talking about a plan to work with farmers to retain workers who are in the U.S. illegally, provided that they leave and then come back through what he said would be a legal process. Can you give details on what that would look like, how many workers he's talking about, how long a plan like that would take to implement, and the timeline for more details on getting this actually to implementation?
I can check in with our immigration and our policy team and get you some more details on that, Karen.
And is this something he wants to roll out soon? I mean, he was talking back and forth with Secretary Rollins.
Right.
This is kind of imminent that he wants to do this.
Yeah, look, the president is in constant communication with all of his cabinet secretaries, particularly Secretary Rollins, who has the backs of American farmers and ranchers. It's something that he spoke about with her in the front of all the cameras in the cabinet room, but I'll check in with not only our immigration team, but also with USDA, and we'll get you an answer. Jonathan.
Hi, Caroline.
Hi, it's good to see you in here.
You too. The president has long said that it would be an abuse of power for a president to direct prosecutors to investigate him. Last week, President Trump explicitly directed the Justice Department to scrutinize Chris Krebs to see if it can find any evidence of criminal wrongdoing. How is that not an abuse of power to direct the Justice Department to look into an individual, a named individual?
Look, the president signed that executive order. It's the position of the president in this White House that it's well within his authority to do it. Otherwise, he wouldn't have signed it. And he signed it, and that's his policy. Jeff, how you doing?
Fine, thanks, Caroline. A follow-up on Harvard. The president floated on Truth Social, I believe, the possibility of removing tax-exempt status. How serious is that threat, and are there other universities he's considering? doing? And then a follow-up question on foreign policy. Can you give us an update on what the president hopes to come from the next round of talks with Iran?
Sure. First, when it comes to Harvard, as I said, the president has been quite clear they must follow federal law. He also wants to see Harvard apologize, and Harvard should apologize for the egregious anti-Semitism that took place on their college campus against Jewish American students. There were professors who said that he had engaged in discriminatory behavior against Jewish students. Of course, you had the former president of the university saying bullying and harassment depends on the context. You also had an encampment on Harvard Yard that we all saw play out before the cameras. The university failed to impose formal discipline on any students for this anti-Semitic conduct violations, including the occupation of a campus building and the disruption of classes with bullhorns. The president believes Harvard should apologize to its Jewish American students for allowing such egregious behavior. As for the tax-exempt status, I would defer you to the IRS for any updates. I do want to answer your question on Iran, of course. The maximum pressure campaign on Iran continues, but as you know, the president has made it clear he wants to see dialogue and discussion with Iran while making his directive about Iran never being able to obtain a nuclear weapon quite clear. And the president spoke to the Sultan of Oman today, who helped facilitate these talks. I have a readout for all of you. He held a call with the Sultan of Oman today, and he thanked him for hosting the first direct meeting between the United States and Iran and emphasized the need for Iran to end its nuclear program through negotiations. The two leaders also discussed the United States' ongoing operations against the Houthis and emphasized that the Houthis will pay a severe price until they end their attacks on maritime traffic in the Red Sea. As you know, an additional negotiation between Steve Witkoff and Iran's representative has been scheduled for Saturday. And since these are ongoing negotiations, I have nothing more to add on that.
Can I talk about Iran?
Sure.
Oh, thank you, Caroline. When you said that the president said that Iran will never have nuclear weapon, is the focus on dismantling the entire nuclear program, or it just restricting enriched uranium or the missile program?
The president does not want to see Iran have a nuclear program. He does not want Iran to obtain a nuclear weapon. He's been very clear about this. Shelby. Shelby, you have a seat today.
I know. Stole it.
Glad to see it.
Two quick ones on TikTok. First, is the president expecting to extend the TikTok ban that's now June 19th if China doesn't come to the table in time?
Well, June 19th is a long ways away, obviously. I think it's 2 months away. 2 months is a long time, and the Trump administration, as you have all seen, we work at Trump speed around here. We get a lot done, so definitely don't want to get ahead. The vice president continues to lead these negotiations and talks. The president's involved, and they're ongoing.
And then the president previously said he'd consider reducing tariffs on China in order to get a TikTok deal done. Is that option still on the table?
Look, the president has made his position on China quite clear, although I do have an additional statement that he just shared with me in the Oval Office. The ball is in China's court. China needs to make a deal with us. We don't have to make a deal with them. There's no difference between China and any other country except they are much larger. And China wants what we have, what every country wants, what we have, the American consumer. Or to put it another way, they need our money. So the president, again, has made it quite clear that he's open to a deal with China, but China needs to make a deal with the United States of America. Sure.
On tariffs, yesterday in the Oval Office...
Which outlet are you with?
The Canadian Public Broadcaster.
Oh, nice to see you.
Thank you. Yesterday in the Oval Office, President Trump suggested that there could be some help for automakers. I'm wondering what that looks like. Is it tariff relief on the 25% tariffs that are in place right now, or the new tariffs that are coming up in May on auto parts? And a second on Canada, if I may. President Trump's tone when it comes to Canada-U.S. relations, Canadians have noticed it's shifted a bit in the past few weeks. Ever since the election campaign started, he stopped talking about Canada becoming the 51st state, at least publicly. I'm wondering if that's on purpose and why.
I would reject the president's position on Canada has shifted. Perhaps he just hasn't been asked about Canada by questions from this group in the Oval Office when they see him almost every day, but the president still maintains his position on Canada. The United States has been subsidizing Canada's national defense, and he believes that Canadians would benefit greatly from becoming the 51st state of the United States of America. As for autos and auto parts, I don't have anything to read out for you there, but I think the point the president was making is flexibility, and he has flexibility flexibility when it comes to negotiations and talks, but ultimately his goal in his fair trade deals that he is pursuing with many countries around the world is to put the American worker first. And we had automakers and auto workers here at the White House on Liberation Day who believe in this president and his negotiating ability to put them first and to bring those jobs back to the United States of America. And the president's been very clear about that in his conversations with the automakers as well. Deanna, go ahead.
Thanks, Caroline. One on Ukraine and one on China. On Ukraine, this past weekend, Zelensky offered an invitation to President Trump, extending an offer for him to visit Ukraine. Just wondering if there's any update on that. Has Trump seen that offer and what he's thinking about?
I don't know. Actually, I haven't talked to the president about that or if he saw Zelensky's offer. I'm sure he did. I haven't spoken to him about it. I can ask him what he thinks. I certainly don't have any plans to share on a potential trip to Ukraine, though.
And then on China, this last week, Chinese officials were posting videos on social media sites depicting Trump, J.D. Vance, Elon Musk in AI-generated videos working in factories, putting together Nike shoes and iPhones and products like that. Does the White House, have they seen these videos? Do you guys have a response to that?
I have seen the videos. I'm not sure who made the videos or if we can verify the authenticity, but whoever made it clearly does not see the potential of the American worker, the American workforce. The president believes in the American people, and he knows that we have the best not only consumer base in the world, but also the best workforce in the world, and that's why he's so focused on bringing investments home and shoring up our critical supply chains and bolstering our manufacturing here as well. Brett.
Thanks, Caroline. Would the president support a ban on members of Congress trading stocks?
I'm certain that's something the president would be interested in looking at, and I can ask him if he would support such a bill. Sure. Yes.
I have a question about the president's post from this morning on farmers. He asked farmers to be patient and just hold on. But a lot of farmers that I've talked to in the last week or so have said, they're in the middle of spring planting season and that a trade war makes everything sort of up in the air. What would his message to them be? And also, is there anything specifically planned to provide relief like in President Trump's last term?
Yes, well, relief is being considered. The Secretary of Agriculture, I know, has spoken to the president about that, and again, it's being considered. And as for the president's message to the farmers, he put it out himself. He could speak for himself much better than I can speak for him, and so I would just direct you to the statement he had telling the farmers again and reiterating his support for them and that he has their backs, which he certainly does. Kelly, in the back.
Thanks, Caroline. 2 questions. The first one, a Georgia man was just arrested over alleged threats to kill Director of National Intelligence Tulsi Gabbard. Reportedly, there is now increased security around the FBI Deputy Director. Can you talk about the level of threats against various administration officials, and then a second one on Biden?
I'm sorry to hear that. I had not seen that report. It's very unfortunately, and obviously the White House, the president, and the entire administration condemn any threats of violence against any administration officials or public officials on both sides of the aisle here in Washington, D.C. It shouldn't be tolerated, and we commend the local law enforcement agencies for arresting this individual.
Former President Biden, he's set to deliver his first major speech since leaving office tonight. He plans to talk about what I'm told will be Social Security under the current administration, closing of offices, longer wait times, harder for seniors and people with disabilities to access earned benefits is what Democrats have been saying today. I wanted to get the president's response, or if he plans to respond to this, and comments on what Democrats are calling cuts to Social Security.
My first reaction when seeing former President Biden was speaking tonight was I'm shocked that he is speaking at nighttime. I thought his bedtime was much earlier than his speech tonight. I understand the topic of his speech will be Social Security. Let me make it very clear ahead of former President Biden's remarks. President Trump, is absolutely certain about protecting Social Security benefits for law-abiding, tax-paying American citizens and seniors who have paid into this program. He will always protect that program. He campaigned on it, he protected it in his first term, and he's back again to continue protecting it. On the topic of Social Security, I have some news before I let you all go. Later this afternoon, the president will be signing a presidential memorandum aimed at stopping illegal aliens and other ineligible people from obtaining Social Security Act benefits. The memorandum will direct the administration to ensure ineligible aliens are not receiving funds from the Social Security Act programs. It will expand the Social Security Administration's fraud prosecutor program to at least 50 U.S. attorney offices and establishes a Medicare and Medicaid fraud prosecution program in 15 U.S. attorney offices. The memorandum will also require the Social Security Administration Inspector General to investigate earning reports for individuals aged 100 or older with mismatched Social Security records to combat identity theft. And the memorandum will direct the Social Security Administration to consider whether to reinstate the use of civil monetary penalties against individuals who engage in Social Security fraud, an effort that has been paused for several years. These taxpayer-funded benefits should be only for eligible taxpayers. And President Biden should think about what he did in his last term, which is allow tens of millions of illegal people into our country, many of whom were fraudulently receiving these benefits. So you'll hear from the president on that later, and we will see you later in the East Room. Bye, guys.
Thanks, Caroline.
Okay, 2 o'clock, top of the hour here at RSBN Live. I'm Matthew Alvarez. Thanks so much for watching and streaming in the Karoline Leavitt press conference there at the White House. She's referring to, of course, the president signing a memorandum, also some executive orders a bit later at the Oval Office. Also, the East Room, that coverage starts at 3 o'clock right here on Right Side Broadcasting Network as the Navy midshipmen will be there. You'll have to check it out to see what's going on there for that great trophy presentation a bit later. Again, 3 o'clock Eastern. So in 59 minutes from now, Robert McNeely will be hosting for that coverage. Thanks so much for streaming in. I'm Matthew Alvarez once again. Let's go to Colonial Metals Group, thanking them for being a great sponsor here. All you have to do is go to freegoldguide.com/RSBN. Let's shift over to angelpaste.com as well. RSBN is the promo code. You can use it for a number of products. One you see on your screen right there. Angelpaste.com. Let's go now to Kalshi.com/RSBN. A lot of great questions to trade on, bet on that awesome website. When will Bitcoin hit $150,000? There's a lot of great topics there. Kalshi.com/RSBN. Also, if you'd like to donate to Right Side, all you have to do is text RSBN to 801-801. So just text RSBN to 801-801. For all of us at Right Side Broadcasting Network, I'm Matthew Alvarez. Thanks again for streaming in. We'll see you in about an hour right here on RSBN Live.
Welcome to Right Side Broadcasting Network, your trusted conservative news outlet. At RSBN, we deliver the truth when the mainstream media falls short. Since 2015, we've proudly broadcasted every single one of President Trump's iconic MAGA rallies, bringing you the excitement and energy live before anyone else. By watching RSBN, you get an unfiltered front row view of the action on the ground. We interview the crowds to give a voice to millions of Americans just like you. We show you President Trump's speeches in their entirety, free from interruptions and censorship. We cover the stories that matter to you with the integrity and passion you deserve. Thank you for choosing RSBN as your home for America First News. Together, we stand strong, united, and informed, so join us and be part of the right side of history.
President Trump is keeping his promises and saving America. And your kids can learn all about it for free with a new Kids Guide to President Trump. This fun guide shows kids all the steps President Trump is taking to put America back on top of the world stage, including building a strong economy, protecting our borders, and negotiating trade deals. It's an exciting way for kids to learn about President Trump's outstanding leadership. Act now and get a free bonus guide, The Courage of the President. Order now at freetrumpbook.com. That's freetrumpbook.com.
Hey y'all, it's Silk from the Diamond and Silk Chit Chat Live Show. Look, don't forget to check me out right here on RSBN Network. Be sure to watch the show on Right Side Broadcasting Network, and I want you to support Right Side Broadcasting Network. Yes, it's imperative that you do so, okay? I look to see y'all soon. Bye-bye.
Hello, everyone. I'm excited to announce the next generation of energy drinks, Rev 7. It has no sugar and no caffeine. Instead, Rev 7 uses Go BHB. Go BHB is one of the body's primary ketones, and it provides the most efficient and clean fuel that your body needs. It also helps you stay energized all day with no crashes. Not only that, it produces 3 times more brain energy than sugar, which helps boost your memory, focus, and mental sharpness. It also helps reduce stress and helps balance your mood. Rev 7 does all that while being the best tasting energy drink ever. So go to mypillow.com or call the number on your screen. Use your promo code to save 20% today. I'm so sure you're going to love Rev 7. For a limited time, you get our introductory 3-pack absolutely free. I drink Rev 7 every day and I absolutely love it, and so will you.